Howdy folks, this is Checkers, and this will probably evolve into something like a rant on boss fights and endgame mechanics, but at the moment, this is Dishonored 2. And we're here in Dishonored 2 because I was more than a little disappointed in the end of Dishonored 2. So there may be some spoilers here. I will try my best to avoid them or to speak in circumspect terms, but there may be spoilers, so just be advised. But what I want to talk about first is bosses and boss fights. I don't like them, and there is a very good reason I don't like them. They are a mistake. They are a limitation of the past that we have enshrined in the present. This, as I said, is Dishonored 2, and it is a beautiful game. Its graphics are astonishing. It is art and artistry. Its gameplay mechanics are great, frankly, and there are myriad options available for moving around and attacking, for investigation, for manipulating this world. In the past, that wasn't true. In the past, games were far more limited. In the past, you may have been lucky to jump on an enemy to harm them, or if you were crazy lucky, you might have a string of pixels that looked something like a sword, and you could attack your enemy. If you were really lucky, you might have something that looked like a ranged weapon, and you could shoot your enemy. But that was pretty much it. You were not going to lay a trap for your enemy. You were not going to talk to your enemy. You are not going to negotiate them out of whatever evilness they had intended. The game couldn't handle it. You were working with an extremely limited program that was working on an extremely limited system that was working with extremely limited memory. So when all of that is true, and you make your game, how do you tell the difference between the soldier and the officer? You can't really change their uniforms or the way they look. What you can do is make one bigger. How do you tell the difference between the citizen and the mayor? Maybe you give the mayor more hit points. How do you tell the difference between the worker and the boss? Maybe you manipulate a bit more math and let the boss do more damage. And thus the boss is born. Not because it was the ideal ending to the situation, but because it was the only ending, the only identifiable way to make one character different from another. It wasn't that these designers said, this is the way we must go forward. This is the sacred truth of all game endings. But as we progressed into the future, young gamers became designers, and they thought to themselves, aha, the boss is the truth. The boss is the way. The boss is the sacred way of truth. It's as if those old designers had flown in an airplane, a gloriously shiny, beautiful metal airplane, and the young gamers looked at it and thought, having never seen it before, this is the SkyGod. Did you not see it descend from the sky and disgorge upon the earth? Our predecessors. Lo, shall we honor it in the future? And thus they did. Except in the future, their SkyGod no longer carried cargo, it didn't carry people or weapons, it carried the nightmares of game mechanics never before seen. It carried damage heretofore only seen by natural disasters, and hit points that would make a mountain blush. And why? Strictly because of an aberrant tradition. Bosses, like I said, didn't evolve into bosses because they were the grand solution. They evolved into bosses because there was no other way to determine who the leader was. There was no other interaction available in these extremely limited games. We're beyond that now. We can make games do just about anything. Someone asked me what I thought the end, how Dishonored 2 should have ended, let's say. Well, I don't think it should have ended in a boss fight. We've spent the entire game learning to be an assassin, a killer, or if you wanted to be super good, to be essentially the equivalent of Batman. The perfect stealth takedown artist. What has our opponent learned to do? Magic. She's obviously killed a great number of people, but I really don't think these guys put up quite the fight. So why should she be an amazing killer? Why should she have glorious powers heretofore unseen? Well, you might say, how are we supposed to know that she's the leader, that she's the big bad guy, that she's the big bad boss? She's in a castle. We had to fight through an entire city of guards and ghost dogs and witches to find her. What more do you need to signify the leader? Apparently, you need a boss fight. The castle just wasn't quite enough. So how should it have ended? Okay, here comes the big bad spoilers, if I didn't already do that. Well, it should have ended right outside the painting, in either a straight up fight or a straight up assassination. It should not have devolved into things heretofore unseen. It just shouldn't. And that kind of leads us into endgame mechanics and gameplay. We spent the entire game learning to be this super secret, stealthy, wonderful assassin, takedown artist, whatever you want to be. And it's as if we spent this entire time learning to play piano. Right? All of these skills coming together to form notes and chords. And in the end game to me should have been us playing music. It should have been everything that we had learned. And now maybe I'm taking this a bit too far because of something our opponent said, but she said that your petty toys won't work here. And I believe she was right. Some of them most definitely did not. It was like the old episodes of Star Trek where they would beam in and the aliens would say, "Your phasers have been rendered inoperative." That's okay. I brought a gun. But why spend the entire game teaching us all of these skills, teaching us to play the piano, and then at the very end stick us in front of another instrument entirely and tell us to do something completely different? That's essentially how game mechanics feel to me. If I make mistakes in a game, I want it to be because I made the mistake. I missed. I didn't do it right. I want it to be because I failed. If you give me this ability, this cool ability to do a thing, and I can do it right. That's the ultimate goal, right? That's what I've spent all of this time learning. Why take that away from me? Why isn't that part of what I'm doing? When you have something like what happens at the end of this game, where you essentially enter into a new room and, well, let's be honest, unless you were crazy meticulous, crazy lucky, you were going to die. You were going to die, and you were going to have to learn a new set of rules. You were going to have to learn to play a new instrument. You are going to have to learn a new way to do things. And that is essentially how this breaks down. Not as bad as some other games, granted, but still, the idea of going through the entire full length and body of your game, learning one thing, only to have everything turned on its head at the end, that's not good, and it's not okay. And it's honestly not fun. If we were playing a game, let's say something like Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I was the dungeon master, and you were the party. Now, Dungeons and Dragons, death is a very serious thing. At least it was back in the day when I played. If you were to enter a room and I killed your entire party as the dungeon master, you would be rightly, really angry. And that is not even nearly the emotion you would feel. So why is it that it's okay in a game to have the developers put us in a situation where we must die to learn to do what they want us to do? Why is that okay? What's the game for if not to teach us how to play? And if we can't play without dying? Now, I don't mean dying by our own mistakes. Like I said, if you have taught me the skills and I do it wrong, that's my fault, and I'm okay with that. If I didn't get it right because I was too slow, or I forgot to use the proper skill, or I hadn't learned the proper skill yet, or I advanced too far too fast, that's on me. But if your way of teaching me to play a game is to kill me, to make me actually fail because there's no other choice, not because I didn't learn, not because I did it wrong, not because I'm too slow, but because that is the only way, you have failed in my eyes. So yeah, MMO boss fights, I'm looking square at you. The idea of having to go and learn a boss by dying over and over and over is beyond mystifying to me. But that's okay. Much like boss fights, MMOs are a bit of an aberration. They are something that evolved out of a limitation into, well, what they are now. But that's another video for another time. So, how should it have ended? The same way it played through. If you had the skill and the ability, you should have been able to take down the final bad guy the same way you took down all of the others. Now, granted, there was one special magical variation to this character, but we came equipped for that. That's how, let's say, Batman wins all his fights, right? Coming equipped, knowing what to do, having planned ahead. When you go into that last fight and never having the ability to plan ahead, never knowing because you can't know because you've never seen the abilities before, how is that at all a fair fight? boss fights are an archaic idea. And I'm not saying that you can't have boss fights. People have enjoyed it. You know, I'm not saying strike all boss fights from all games, if that's what you want to do. But you know what? There are games that are a little more suited to that. And they're not games that spend a lot of time teaching you other skills. And the best games that still have boss fights are still going to incorporate everything you've learned. I think it's entirely possible to have a boss fight without having the impossible endgame mechanics that require you to die endlessly over and over again. Because let's be entirely clear and honest about that behavior. That behavior isn't to make you a better player. It's not because it's trying to be a better game. It's trying to lengthen its gameplay. It's trying to pad out the ending. It's trying to make you subscribe for longer, to drop more coins in the machine, to spend more time doing something that you should have been taught to do in the main body of the game. We all know it. We all know it's entirely true. That whole mechanic of wiping a million times before you learn to finally get it right in harmony is built to make you subscribe for longer, to make you draw more of your friends in who will subscribe for longer. Just like old boss fights were meant to make you dump more coins into the arcade machine. These are archaic ideals, and games like this, games like Dishonored 2, deserve more. This was a great game, and I praised it right up until the end. Every single, let's call them, unfortunately, for lack of a better common term, mini-bosses, every single one of them we could take down in reasonable fashion with the skills we had learned and our own skill and ability. Only in the very end to have it all kicked to the side. And then on top of that, to be kicked even further down by an arbitrary, binary choice. Now, before anyone asks, yes, I know there is a no-kill takedown of the main bad guy in Dishonored 2. But, just like the other endgame mechanics of dubious nature I've mentioned, I sincerely doubt anyone just walked in and figured it out. Even the most meticulous and careful of player may have found the first portion of it, but then understanding exactly what to do if it wasn't spelled out, I don't know that I'm seeing it. It was neither logical nor clear in any way, shape, or form. It was the modern-day equivalent of knowing that down, down, left, down, up, down, right, and hold for 12 seconds is the way to kill the boss. So, what's my point in all of this? My point is that going forward, we should expect more from our games. We have games that are capable of oh so much more, of oh so much more interesting in terms of endings. They don't all have to devolve into boss fights. Even games from the same publisher. Not to toot Fallout 4's horn too much, but, you know, we didn't exactly have to fight a certain gray-haired individual, you know, in fighters with missiles we'd never seen before because all of a sudden there were magically Harriers that appeared out of nowhere. Or F-16s, or, you know, all of a sudden sorcery was a part of the world. It was logical, and it made sense. And we can do that in games. We can have that. And we can, you know, expect that. We can expect better. I honestly did expect better of this. And I'm not saying that Arcane are horrible people, or Bethesda is horrible people. I'm just saying it was an archaic idea. An idea whose time is past. and whose time never really belonged to a game like this. This isn't a boss fight game. This isn't a weird in-game mechanic kind of game. And, you know, if you disagree, you're more than welcome to. I don't claim that everyone's opinion should be mine, but I do feel that the game is capable of more, the developers are capable of more, and the industry as a whole is capable of more. And that we, as gamers who want this industry to flourish, not to stagnate, we should realize the airplanes are airplanes, not SkyGods. We should realize that bosses and crazy in-game mechanics are archaic ideals meant to pad gaming and rake more money out of the end user. And we should want our beloved pastime to evolve, to become more, to use the technology of the new systems, the new programming, the more memory, the more imagination, to be more than just the same 40-year-old mechanics, 30-year-old mechanics. Games are worth more. Games are capable of so much more. I really, fully and wholeheartedly believe in games. I love them to absolute distraction. One day, I promise, I will get on that video talking about why I feel heart and soul that games are the next evolution of entertainment. But for now, suffice it to say that I really, really do believe that. I don't believe that boss fights and strange endgame mechanics should disappear entirely. I am a firm believer in maintaining our history, but I am also a firm believer in looking forward, of letting this amazing medium become all that it can be, not just what it's been in the past. So, that, my friends, is my boss fight and in-game mechanic rant, coupled with my opinions on what maybe Dishonored 2 could have done a little bit better. How do we know the boss is the boss? The boss is inside the giant castle. The boss is surrounded by soldiers and witches and ghostly dogs. That's kind of a big signifier. Alrighty. I thank you for letting me bend your ear and waste your time. I thank you kindly for your patience. And I thank you for watching. I would like to point out that if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a small letter I with a white circle around it. These are cards and links to other videos that I've made. Also, I have a Twitter link in the description of the video and on my channel's main page. If you're on mobile, it'll be on my channel's About page. I would like to thank you guys for being the best community out there. Truly, you guys are awesome, and you make this an absolute joy to do, even when I do it so loudly and emphatically that I lose my voice. I would also like to thank you for watching. I hope you found the video entertaining and maybe just a little bit thought-provoking. I would like to invite you to subscribe, like, and share if you so desire. And to ask you, above all, to please take care.